Hello and welcome to Guitarist Magazine. We can be found on the web at www.guitarist.com. My name is Jason JROCK Houston. It's my honor to be speaking with a musician, guitarist J.D. Mcgibney. How you doing today, J.D.?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
I've been looking really forward to, since I first spoke with you, and setting this up and doing an interview today because, initially somebody might go to your Facebook page and they say, okay, he's a guitar player, he's a metal guy, but the more you read the stuff and check out what you have posted, like a lot of us, you're a multifaceted human being. There's much more to you than what might meet the eye, if you know what I mean. And let's get a little of that. While you are a musician, I'd like to talk about your music. Now you have a band, I believe, called Angels of the Battlefield. So let's talk a little bit about that. How long has the band been around?
Man, the band itself has been around for a while because it's just been. It started off as my kind of like passion project on the side.
Yeah.
So I would just go to it when I wanted to, vent and write music and just be artistic. And I didn't really focus a lot on making it a band, a serious band. For a really long time. That's more been the past year or so that I've focused on making that an actual part of my career. Yeah,
and you just started posting a lot of these videos up on Facebook, and that's how I first kind of discovered you. And like I said, we talked a little more about the music, but you got some podcasts, like for example, I think it's called Conquer Your Battlefield. That was a podcast where you were talking to some woman about her battle with bulimia, and I just thought kind of again, here's a metal guitar player, a guitar player, musician, and that's not the first thing you might think that he'd be talking to somebody about, but that's what I enjoyed about the podcast, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, the Conquer Your Battlefield podcast is kind of, an extension and that ties into the whole purpose of Angels on the Battlefield. The whole purpose. For me, music in general has always just been kind of like my pillar to help me through my toughest times.
Yeah.
Angels on the Battlefield, like I mentioned earlier, was kind of my personal go-to to help me recenter myself. So the podcast is an extension of that mission, where I'm literally just talking to people directly about things that they have personally dealt with. Yeah.
I mean, that's even about the band and the music. That's something that kind of I was interested in. I was reading up kind of where most people get into, creating a band or creating music because they want to be a creative person. And I'm sure you have that aspect to creating your music. But it seems like with you, it's a little more than most people. Where like me, I believe, music is a universal language. It has a great way of bringing people together, and it could be metal music, it could be pop music, it could be folk music. Any type of music has a real way of bringing people together. And I was reading on your some of the stuff you had up on your site about you also like to use music not just to bring people together, but to kind of like you said, it's a kind of a therapy for you to, when you're going through certain things. You like to use music to help other people. I mean, let's talk a little bit about that, because that's kind of a unique perspective, I think.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like I said, it's music has always been kind of that pillar for me. And when I started doing music as a career, I started out doing session work for people, going out on tour, going and doing stuff for studio work, and it always felt good for me to help other people achieve their dreams. And when I decided to make Angels on the Battlefield an actual out of the bedroom kind of project, I asked myself what it was about music that drew me to it in the first place. And I wanted to make that the core essence of what the project was and what it stood for. So for me, it was about reminding myself that I have the power to do what it is that I want, and that I can have confidence in myself. So I wanted to give that back to the world. When I fell in love with music, when I listened to Tony Iommi playing guitar, I listened to Metallica,
yeah.
I felt that sense of empowerment. I have permission to be me. I have permission to feel these feelings as intensely as I'm feeling them. And I wanted to give give that back with Angels on the Battlefield.
Yeah, and it's interesting you cite Tony Iommi as an influence. A lot of metal guys do, but the thing is, a lot of people may not even realize. He gets a lot of credit for creating that kind of heavy metal sound. They were one of the first metal bands, Sabbath. But the thing is, a lot of people may or may not realize that when Iommi was very early, like a teenager, I think he had this accident where 2 of his fingers were chopped off by an electric saw, and that's
he's missing half his fingertips. He's got the little cork extensions,
and that's why he plays the way he does. And you stop and think about if this guy had not, most people go through something like that. They would think, man, I'm never going to be able to play the guitar, but he kind of soldiered on, and look at the career he's had.
Yeah, I mean, the man helped create an entire genre of music.
Yeah, and I was curious, how old were you when you first started playing music, and was the guitar your first instrument?
I was 14 years old when I first picked up a guitar, and that was my first instrument. I actually did not like music up until about junior high, just shortly before I picked up guitar.
And so what was it about that wanted you to pick up the guitar? When you got to that point, I mean, was it just because you were listening to the music you were listening to and you're like, I want to do that, or?
I tell the story a whole bunch, but, growing up, my mother basically controlled the radio anytime that we were in the car or whatnot. So she listens to a lot of nothing against these artists, these bands, but it's just not my cup of tea. But she listens to a lot of the Beach Boys and Leslie Gore, a lot of bubblegum pop, and nothing ever clicked with me. And I was like, okay, whatever. I don't like music.
Yeah.
And then I ended up listening to. I was watching the movie Little Nicky, of all things, and they introduced me to Ozzy Osbourne. I'm like, oh my god, you're allowed to do this with music. So I kind of started listening to more and more music. It was like hard rock, classic heavy metal, and I was like, oh, this is great. And then one day, I was in the car with just my dad. So my dad had control of the radio, and the song "N.I.B." by Black Sabbath comes on.
Wow.
And
heavy.
I was just completely captivated from beginning to end. And by the time the song ended, it just so happened to coincide with my dad parking the car in our driveway as we got home, and I just turned to him, and I was like, Dad, I want to learn guitar.
Yeah, what's interesting about that is that's one of my all-time favorite Sabbath tunes, and a lot of people do not realize that those classic Ozzy-era albums that Sabbath did, it was Geezer Butler that wrote the lyrics, not Ozzy. And N.I.B., what I've always loved about that track, I mean, as great as Tony Iommi is on that track, I mean, it's really a bass-heavy, it's really centered around the bass. And so,
especially with that intro.
Yeah, and he's playing the bass like, a guitar player would maybe play. And, I mean, just listen to that bass line that runs all the way through that song.
Oh yeah, no, he's totally pulling that song together. Tony Iommi has some killer riffs in that song. Yeah. He's got a couple of great solos, but Geezer is pulling that song together, and he's the glue of that song.
Oh yeah, I mean, so I was curious, did you discover Ozzy first, or were you a Sabbath fan first?
It was Ozzy Osbourne first through Little Nicky. Because I don't know if you've seen the movie, but the two heavy metal characters in that movie are obsessed with Ozzy.
Yeah, another kind of cult Ozzy film I always loved was the film Trick or Treat, where him and Gene Simmons do a little cameo, and Ozzy's he plays a part of a preacher, if you can even imagine.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah. It's he's in the film for maybe a total of 5 minutes, a little cameo, but I mean, I imagine he got a huge chunk of change just for doing the 5 minutes.
Oh, probably.
Yeah.
It's totally worth it too.
Yeah, and so talk about when you got into music, you said first you started doing sessions. So was that a good way just for you to kind of get experience, or you thought it would be fun just to play with different people?
Well, I started off doing music in bands on Long Island. I was in high school when I got into my first band, and I just was in and out of bands all throughout my senior year, and then senior year of high school, and then all throughout college. And we were doing the local circuit, and playing bars, and doing shows and whatnot. But it was kind of the local Long Island circuit. But we were all kind of just treating it like a bunch of kids playing in a band. And I had met my mentor, who was the first person in my entire life who told me that, hey, it is viable to be a professional entertainer.
Yeah.
But like he taught me how to run myself like a business, and one of the things that he taught me that I kind of held to heart was like, if I want to work in this industry and like be in a band myself, I have to like be around these people and I have to work. So I moved from Long Island to LA and started just meeting people, and opportunities slowly started to pop up once I started to like socialize in those circles. And
I mean, networking is great. I mean, that's one of the things I love about Facebook. I mean, I can't tell you, I mean, how many people like you I've discovered on Facebook, and that's how I find a lot of people that I do these interviews with. And so networking, you just got to put yourself out there. And I'll tell you, JD, right now, is I think if you're aware of this or not, I mean, like I said, I kind of just recently discovered you on Facebook, and I will tell you, like even in prepping for the interview today, last night and a little bit today, I've been reading the stuff up on your site, and as far as, Facebook, and it navigates to your other sites, that's real great. But like your Facebook page, even, it's real flashy looking. I think you're great at marketing yourself. I mean, even the photos up there, they look real flashy, and that's important because I can't tell you like how many bands that I interview, you go on their Facebook page. Oh yeah, sure. Go pick any photos you want off our Facebook page, and I can't tell you, even like a lot of professional bands, maybe they got like one or two photos up, or the guy I'm interviewing doesn't even have a photo of himself. Just like with the band, or they don't have a great selection of photos. So, I mean, the fact that you seem to know how to market yourself and got great looking, flashy photos, I think. That's a big part of why people are starting to notice, what you're doing.
Well, thank you very much. Again, like my mentor taught me a lot of really important information, and one of the things was like any business, whether it's a band, whether it's an artist, whether it's an actor, an actress, producer, if it's like a coffee shop, a donut shop, you have to have a way that you present yourself. You have to have some sort of brand that you're building that people can connect to, because anybody can play music. Anybody can write a song. But at the end of the day, the song and the music is just a thing, and people can't connect to things. Yeah. What people connect to are the people creating those things, the message behind what something stands for. So it got ingrained into me from my mentor, and then from, just like people that I met out here who are working in the music industry. It's like you have to have some sort of way for people to connect to whatever it is that you as an individual or you as a band stand for emotionally. What is it that you are trying to do in the world? What's your story?
Yeah,
what makes you human and relatable?
Yeah, and of course the music industry is better. I mean, much different, from when we were growing up. But let me ask you, like, as far as Angels of the Battlefield, do you guys have a CD out? Are you working towards that right now? Because I see you have some songs up.
There's right now there's an EP that is out that I released in 2019.
Okay.
It's got like 7 songs, but that was just me as an individual.
Putting music out there.
With, some friends and some session musicians. But just now, like I said, the past year I've gotten a full lineup. So I have Jason Klein playing bass, who's from formerly of Butcher Babies. I have William Learman playing drums, who is formerly of Voodoo Kung Fu and currently plays in Northwind Wolves, which is an amazing band.
Wow.
Totally recommend them. And then my buddy Chris Wortham, who is a keyboard player, and he is a film and TV composer, is playing keys for the project and also doing all the extra additional orchestration. And
so, have you done any live shows with the band yet since you got this lineup together?
Not yet. Basically, everything kind of came together during COVID.
Okay.
And at the time, I was in Ohio.
Wow.
And everyone was kind of like spread around, LA County and Orange County. So when the band first came together as a single unit, the other 3 guys had not met each other. I just knew them all individually. So
wow.
we started recording some demos, remotely, because at this point, everybody can record from their bedroom.
Yeah.
Heavy metal. So we were just doing that remotely, and then shortly after, actually a couple months after I moved back, I moved back to LA in December. We had our first in-person meetup at rehearsal with everybody in April.
Yeah, and so you've been around as far as, like you said, you lived in New York, you lived in Ohio, you lived in Los Angeles. So I mean, What was that like, from moving from Ohio to Los Angeles? Quite different, I'd imagine.
Oh, totally. Like I mentioned, I originally started, was born and raised in Long Island. Then I moved out to LA in 2014. I was out here for a couple of years, and then I moved back to the East Coast. I moved to Brooklyn, and I was working with my buddy for a little bit to help him with his company for a little while. But then COVID happened, pandemic, everything shut down, everything kind of like went to shit for a little bit, and then due to some unforeseen circumstances, him and I ended up having to move to Ohio last minute because of renting problems. And then after that, once things started clearing up, he decided to go back to Long Island. He had to take care of some familial stuff. And I decided to come back to LA to focus on music again, and also to be around family.
Oh, that's good. So now, is music your full-time gig, or do you, like a lot of people, you consider yourself a working musician, got a day job?
Yeah, music is my full-time gig.
Wow, you're pretty serious about it. And then talk about the idea to do the podcast. Again, Conquer Your Battlefield. I urge people to go on and check this stuff out, because it's quite different but interesting. I mean, like I said, I was listening to an episode where you're talking about this lady about her battle with bulimia. Like, how do you get the idea to do the podcast, and then what it's going to be about?
Well, the idea, like I said, came as an extension of Angels on the Battlefield. Like, the whole mission of Angels on the Battlefield is to encourage people to look within themselves, to find their inner strength, to literally conquer their battlefields, whatever it is, whether it's something internal, whether it's external. The whole purpose is to remind people that they have the ability, they have the strength. And at the time, I had just started going to see a therapist for the first time, and I was literally talking through all the stuff that I was, dealing with, that I hadn't really
talked
faced.
about.
So the podcast was like, oh, why don't I just take the mission and literally do what it is that I'm doing, and just talk about these things that I've gone through. But what I've done is I've invited. I started off inviting friends, people that I had friendships with and relationships with, to be like, hey, you want to have a conversation about something that you personally have dealt with. And it's slowly starting to pick up, where people are reaching out going, hey, I would like to share my story about XYZ. So the episode that you're talking about, Alyssa Pizzell, she's an acquaintance that I know through a friend of mine. She was like, I really want to share what I've gone through with bulimia.
So let me ask you, this is a friend of yours, so had you known this about her, or was this like a deep little dark secret she's kind of revealing to you, and you're like, wow, I've known you for this many years, I had no idea you went through that?
She's like an acquaintance, so I know her just through a friend of mine, and I've only talked to her in passing, so this was brand new news to me.
Wow.
But I do have two friends that I did interview on the show that surprised me completely. I was just like, oh, I had no idea about this. My friend Nick Bonanno came on the show for an episode to talk, and he's probably one of the nicest guys I've ever met in my entire life. He's always so down to earth. He's so mild-mannered. He's so soft-spoken. But he's super nice. Will give the shirt off his back to anybody.
Yeah.
And he came on talking about anger management, and I was like, you want to talk about what?
Yeah.
And it was interesting, because I've known the guy for a couple of years at this point, and he opened up about his experience with that, and I had no idea that was something that he struggled with.
Wow.
And I think that just goes to show that in today's society, it is a lot better than what I remember being as a kid.
Yeah.
But there's still very much a stigma about opening up about,
certain things,
your emotions, things you might be struggling with, because I think we have this sense of, if we do that, we're not worthy, or it's seen as weakness. When in reality, it's we're all human beings. We all have emotions. We all have ups. We all have downs.
Especially men. Men aren't real men aren't supposed to cry, and all that stuff you hear. But again, I think a lot of people have come to that realization that it's better to talk about some of your issues than to kind of bottle it up.
Yeah, dude, 100%. I very much agree with that. And that's growing up, that's kind of the mentality that was in my household.
And so, like, after you do each one of these episodes, not only maybe do you learn some about some of your friends, or these people that but do you feel like, wow, that was a deep conversation? I learned something that I didn't know about till today.
Oh yeah, no. There was another one that I interviewed. My friend Rob Rico, he's a comedian. He's a musician. He's a regular Renaissance man. And he was recounting this tale, like, where he basically has, like, lived with PTSD because of it.
Wow.
And, again, I had no idea. And, like, he was telling me the story, and, like, I was literally almost in tears at one point when he was, like, kind of, like, letting me know what happened. I was like, Jesus, dude, like, I had no idea that you went through all of that.
Yeah. And now, it's amazing because, we talked a little bit about not just podcast, fact that you're a musician. And then I wanted to ask you, I was reading something about this thing on your website called This Is My Brave Los Angeles. Can you talk a little bit about that, what that is?
Yeah, that is, This Is My Brave is a mental health nonprofit that is nationally based in the United States. And their mission in general is to encourage people to literally open up and share their experiences with mental illness or addiction and recovery, and kind of just let people know that, like, it's okay to talk about it, because if you talk about it, it's one of the most important parts of healing, and also letting other people know that they're not alone in whatever it is that they're dealing with. And they have different shows throughout the United States that are held in different cities. So each show basically has a bunch of people, cast members, who go up in turn sharing their stories, a little bit about themselves, and they do some sort of artistic performance, whether it's singing a song, whether it's doing a skit, whether it's reading poetry, whether it's doing a monologue, whatever they feel they
can do,
can best represent their experience with.
Because what I was interested that you wrote about this was that you took part in one of their recent events, and I think you said after your not only did you kind of like really enjoy seeing the other people perform and talking about what they were talking about, but you said that you were a little nervous getting up there yourself, and you experienced a little bit of stage fright. And somebody would think, a guy that's a musician and he's done live performance before, and you wouldn't think he'd have stage fright, but I mean, it's an interesting kind of aspect of your of what you went through that day.
Yeah, we ended up having our very first rehearsal for the show 2 weeks ago, something like that. It was relatively recently. So it was like the first rehearsal. So we had all the producers there, we had all the cast members there, and basically we're kind of just like figuring out like the flow of the show when it happens in September. And everyone's going up in turn. Everyone's sharing their stories. Everyone's getting emotional, and like, it's when people open up like that, it's heavy, and then like having so many back to back, it definitely felt there's just a lot of weight.
Yeah, because it's one thing.
It felt good.
Yeah. It's one thing to even do a podcast and be listening to and talking to somebody else about their issues and their problems, but it's quite another one to get up there and kind of be so open about something you've experienced or something that you went through in your life. And the fact that you're able to do it too is kind of interesting. But I think something like this, again, I'm reading about this on your site, JD, and I'm like, wow, this guy is not your typical musician. I mean, again, like I introduced you at the top of the interview. I mean, you're a multifaceted human being, as most people are. But like most people I've interviewed, about who are musicians, they talk about their latest CD or some show they have coming up, or some project they're involved in. But like you said, you use your music as a therapy for you to help others, to bring people together. And then even, if you're performing at one of these events, people discover, okay, this guy's a guitar player. We can check out his music. This is what he's been through. So again, through your music, you're helping people and you're getting yourself out there. It's not the typical way. It's not, you're putting yourself out there in an event like this which is kind of interesting because you don't just have to do live performance. You could take part in an event like this and people can still discover your music,
Yeah, I like music. I like performing. It feels good to be up on stage just rocking out.
Yeah.
But like ultimately, I think the world is a better place if we use our talents to help
helping
back
others,
in some way. And just, it feels good when you're like able to lend a hand, even if you just hold the door open for somebody as they're like walking in or walking out of a building. It just, you're lending a hand to, the people around you.
And as good as it,
I've always made it a point to like try and help people throughout my life, but I have a tendency in the past to have done so at the detriment of
others,
myself. So like I figured that if I do this where I'm focusing on something that I want to do, which is playing music, going out and performing and connecting with people, in an artistic manner, but like use that as the medium to actually help people without sacrificing my own physical or mental well-being. I feel like it's a good change of pace.
I mean, a great way to put that is it's a great way not to just not just for networking, but it's a great way to open the door. I mean, say hello. This is who I am. Who are you? How are you? I mean, as great as it is for you to get out there and kind of let people experience your music and what you do and meet other people and help other people, it must be a great feeling. Like when you took part in that event, and if you feel a little bit of stage fright, but you're thinking, okay, I got through it. You talked about whatever the experience was that you talked about, and I imagine after that, very much like after one of your shows, people come up to you and say, "Hey, man, that story you told was really inspiring, man." And people come up and they give you moral support. That's got to be a great feeling too.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be great to do the event when it actually does happen, like the actual event. To go past the rehearsal. But like in general, it feels good when you're able to connect with people over something artistic, whether it's music, whether it's sculpture, painting, because it's like, as an artist, as a musician, you create something, you put your heart and soul into this song, this piece, and if someone is able to actually understand that thing that you've just created, like there's an understanding, there's a form of communication that goes beyond just words. So like when you have someone come up to you and tell you how much that means to them, or like how you've touched them in some way, it really is special. I don't think any artist ever truly gets tired of hearing that, because
I think music is
a special experience.
Music is a great experience. It's a great, unique way for people to come together. But I think music is also multifaceted in that you could create music and create a musical, a play based around your music. You could create music based around a movie that you get hired to do a soundtrack for. And then you got the two mediums, movie, film, music, and you bring it all together.
Yeah, and there's a sense of community that just always comes with it as well. I think is kind of unique to it, as opposed to say like painting. Like there's a sense of community to it, but like you go to like a museum or go to like a showcase or something like that. Whereas I think with music, you go to. There's more an interactive experience when you're going to a concert, especially if you go to like a rock or a metal concert. People are standing and literally moving around. Or even if you go to like a classical concert, there's still like, you're applauding afterwards, you're cheering. There's that sense of going to that venue and like interacting with the people around you. Yeah,
I mean, a great example of that is I remember watching like a live Steve Vai DVD of one of his concerts, and first of all, to perform a concert where most of the music is just all instrumental, you gotta be able to kind of really keep the audience's attention. That's hard to do with that type of music. But he's such a unique guitar player. I mean, I remember the first time I heard the David Lee Roth song Yankee Rose. That's the first time I ever heard a guitar player literally speak to me through the guitar. I mean, like when he's like, David, da, 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 da. Even he does off one of his solo albums. He had a song called "The Audience Is Listening," and I mean, again,
it's a great song.
Literally, it's an instrumental piece, but literally spoke to me through the guitar, and I'm like, man, that's a great player right there.
Dude, I absolutely love that song, and like, not only is Steve Vai like excellent at like creating masterful and catchy riffs, but like the way he articulates every single note and becomes flashy on top of it. It's a very unique style that the man has mastered, and like you said, he literally speaks to the guitar.
And and JD, listening to some of your tracks, I got one thing I can really give you a great compliment on is the fact that definitely you're a guy that's influenced by metal music, but I can't sit here and say, oh, this guy's a Randy Rhoads wannabe. I mean, what I found very unique about the tracks I was listening to is that it really sounds like fresh original music. It doesn't sound like you're trying to be the next Black Sabbath or anything. I mean, is that hard to do? Like when you're coming up with riffs to kind of have them so original sounding?
I never actually really thought of it that way. I mean, obviously, like when I first started playing guitar, I wanted to be like my heroes. I wanted to be like Black Sabbath, or I wanted to be like like Randy Rhoads, like you mentioned. But eventually, it just got to a point where I was like, what do I want to hear? And I would just write what I wanted to hear. And then once I learned that it wasn't my music, it wasn't any particular song that was going to be the reason for my success, I gave myself permission to write literally what I wanted. I wasn't trying to write the next big hit. I wasn't trying to be like, oh, this song's going to get me discovered. I was like, what do I want to hear? What is it that I want to listen to on repeat? And so I just kind of got in the habit of writing, the songs that I wanted to hear. I was like, oh man, this is really good.
Because I guess that's kind of...
and it's like, not only do I get to write what I want to hear, but I also get to be like, oh, this is what I'm feeling as well.
Because I guess what I'm trying to say is like when I listen to your songs, it's not like every other metal song out there. It really stands out on its own, and it sounds like you're just kind of creating, the music that fits the song, and that's and yet it also feels like you're kind of one of these guys that kind of plays from the heart. You're not trying to be anything else but what you are, and I think that's why it works. I mean, I think if you were trying to be the next Randy Rhoads, people would pick up on that right away.
I think that goes with like anything. If you try to mimic somebody, it comes off as being very like cookie cutter and genuine. It's also just, it's not, to me, it's not fun to just be like, oh, let me be the next, this.
Whoever, I mean, you really also, I mean, that's kind of, if you've ever heard of the Bullet Boys, that's kind of was their claim to fame. They were, I mean, if you listen to that debut album, great debut album, everybody was saying at the time, because Ted Templeman produced them, like Van Halen, they're the next Van Halen. And they kind of got dubbed that, and then all the records after that kind of failed to live up to the debut album, and they're still around, but they're not as big as they once were, if you know what I mean.
I totally get that. And I think, sometimes it's difficult, especially if, like, a band gets, like, dubbed a certain thing, it's difficult. Like, when, I think... the band Trivium at one point got dubbed like the next Metallica, especially in the middle of like when Metallica wasn't being Metallica. So it's just like when the media's like, "Oh, this is it," and it's like, "God damn it, no!" It can be detrimental, but Trivium, I think, had to work to separate themselves from that, because they're like, oh man, we made a great record, but people are calling us Metallica. We have to do something drastically different on the next one and redefine who we are. And I think we are us, and not a Metallica wannabe.
And then another thing I want to ask you about is, I was reading about a project you have called J.D. Mckinley and Friends. You want to talk a little bit about that?
That's also started during the pandemic. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
That also started during the pandemic. Basically, that was more of just like for fun. And the idea was that I was going to write a song and record a song with one other person, like a friend of mine, and just put it out there and kind of just use that as a way to raise funds for charity organization. Because I have a partnership with the JROCK Foundation. So there's only one song out at the moment, and a bunch of songs
on the way. And so talk about the foundation, because that was my next question. What is that all about?
JROCK Foundation is run by a really fantastic gentleman by the name of Joseph Pinola, and he basically started the JROCK Foundation again with the mission to encourage people to reach out during their darkest times, because he himself has dealt with the topic of suicide and dealing with depression. He himself basically had a really rough time when his dad passed away, and he was in a really deep depression, and suicide was very near to a viable choice for him at the time. So he he was able to catch himself, thankfully. And
thank God for that. I mean, we all go through these moments of depression, some worse than others. And the thing about it, you look at a guy like Robin Williams. I mean, you think that guy lived the life, but I mean, obviously, he was a major alcoholic for years, and he suffered from depression, but he hit it real well. I mean, when the news broke about Robin Williams, everybody was so shocked, but wow. But yeah, you make a great point, and but the other thing is, I was reading that I guess a lot of us, you're human, and that you've gone through a lot in your life, and there are times in your life when maybe you weren't as confident, but which is kind of interesting. A guy that does a podcast like we talked about, reaches out and tries to do his best to help other people. You come across as a very confident person. So my point is that there are times in the past when you weren't as confident. I think part of the reason maybe you are, or at least you appear to be, is because, like a lot of people, when you go through things, you suffer pain and loss, it makes you stronger.
Yeah, what it is for me is that at this point, I feel like I know what it is that I want in life, and I'll be completely honest. I definitely question my abilities and my confidence in a lot of things still. So.
Well, you mask it well. You mask it well. Yeah, you mask it well.
Well, thank you. That was definitely not my intention. So nasty, because even for social media, I'll be vocal and whether or not I'm having a down day or an up day.
Yeah.
But it's just I know what I want. I know what makes me happy, and I've come to terms with it doesn't matter if I'm the best at something or if I'm the worst at something. The thing is, I need to just go out and do what makes me happy, and I have to be a good person.
I guess
along the way.
I guess what I mean by you mask it well is that, in listening to the podcast with the lady you're interviewing about being bulimic, I mean, just listening to it, you come across as a very good listener. I couldn't ever imagine any, and I'm just basing this on, the podcast I listened to, the one episode. I could never imagine you seem like you're a good listener, somebody who's easy to talk to. I can never imagine somebody telling, hey man, who the hell do you think you are? What, do you got a PhD or something? I mean, just listening to the podcast, you come across somebody who's, kind of a deep, you listen, you're well mannered, and that comes across. That's kind of the point I'm making, and
thank you.
And you come across as a very confident person. I think that's why I think a lot of these people are able to open up to you and kind of put their stuff out there.
Well, thank you very much for the compliment. I like people. I like hearing people's stories. I like connecting with people, and I know what it's like to feel isolated or feel alone or feel like no one would care, no one wants to hear my story. I want to let people know that that's not the case. People do want to hear. People do want to listen. People want to connect, and I want to encourage people to not feel like how I felt, just because I know what it's like to be there.
Yeah. I mean, I went through something a few years ago, not myself personally, but where somebody I knew, they wrote something online that, all of a sudden me and everybody else reading some statement they made, they came across as very suicidal. This is a person I never would have thought would say anything like that. Right away, I reached out to them and said, hey, you all right? And luckily, we were able to calm them down and stuff. But, the point is, you just never know with people. They could seem like they're the happiest person on, the face of earth. And, again, in my own personal experience, I'm nobody special, but in doing these interviews, JD, the way I got started years ago was just my love of music. I'm not even a musician. And I always had the idea that, everybody's got a story. Like JD Mcgibney, I'm talking to you because I discovered you on Facebook, and I thought, okay, I want to learn more about this guy, his music, who he is. Just what I saw on your Facebook page that we've been discussing today, I thought is interesting enough. And you talk about any given band. The other guys in your band, if I was to interview the drummer, he's got a totally different story. But, his story's no better or no worse. And you give people an opportunity to talk about, their interest in what they do. They open up and they tell a story. And we're going to wrap the interview up with this. But when I first started doing these interviews, the way this is kind of funny when I look back, the way I used to do it is I would have all the questions written out in advance, and I thought, I'm going to be all prepared and everything. But what I quickly discovered is when I listened back to what I did, it came off almost as robotic. Whereas, like, you see how I talk kind of free form, we're just kind of talking like two old friends. To me, that's much better, you know?
Yeah, honestly, those are the best kinds of interviews too, because like no two people are the same, and
yeah.
You know, if you just do like the cookie cutter, like have all the questions written out, like you're gonna get very bland kind of answers, and you're not gonna get like a genuine flow going. Because people are just gonna be like, oh, here's the answer.
And I think you know this from probably your own experience, like growing up, being fans of other musicians and bands. A lot of times in the real well-established bands, the famous bands, you got one or two guys that do all the interviews, and then you never hear from, you know, other guys in the band, and they're probably the more interesting guys in the band because you never hear from them, you know?
Yeah, well, in cases like that, it's more of just like the people doing the interviews are probably the people who are like in charge of all the business.
That's what I mean, yeah.
Making sure that we like maintain a consistent brand message kind of thing.
And so, final question, JD, and then I will let you go. Is the podcast, is that an ongoing thing you do? Like, I mean, how often do you do the episodes? Is it just kind of when you get something?
Oh, yeah, no, that's ongoing. It's every second and fourth Monday of the month. Basically started doing it last, I want to say, so almost a year at this point.
Wow.
So there's like 20-something episodes.
Oh, okay.
So, like, yeah, no, it's constant, and I have more episodes coming out.
Are you on YouTube as well? Like, can people go there and check stuff out, or is it?
Yeah, I'm on YouTube. I usually just send everybody straight to the website because it has links to
Everything.
literally everything.
Well, yeah, I urge them to check out the Facebook page because that's where you discovered you. Very, very interesting cat, very interesting story. And if you liked the way the interview went, JD, I urge you to let's keep in touch, and we can definitely do this again because you know, like I said, once I interview somebody, I feel like you're part of a Chaotic Riffs family, you know. And the other way I discovered you kind of you were following me on my This Is Metal page. That's another thing I do. And so, like I said the other day in the email, I really urge you to feel free to promote any of your stuff on any of our pages, and that's what we love because we really are a community. And I was curious, you mentioned Black Sabbath a couple times, but is there an album or, you know, even another band maybe that you could kind of say, you know, that band, that album kind of really did it for me? The reason I'm asking is I have this other interview series we do called On the Record where like we talk about maybe one of your favorite albums kind of in detail. Talk about the song.
I would totally be down for that one.
Is there one in your mind that you'd like to talk about?
The album that made me want to play music for the rest of my life professionally was Killswitch Engage's Alive or Just Breathing. I
would love to do that for the simple fact that that's one band I have not talked about with anybody else. So that would be, I think, a great show. We could definitely do that down the line. As far as the interview we just did, like I told you before we went on there, I'm planning to post that next Thursday, 1 week from today. Once I have confirmation of that, I will let you know, and you can feel free to post it anywhere you like. So let's keep in touch, JD, and I want to thank you for taking time talking to me. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation, and it was a pleasure to sit here and chat with you. It was
we love to spread the love for great musicians like you, you know, so that's what it's all about here. Take care, my friend, and we will keep in touch.
You too. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Hey, bye-bye.
Chaotic Riffs Magazine.